charges down for you from a felony to a misdemeanor, it works out great. You would love it. That's awesome for you. But the thing is, in immigration, there are certain immigration benefits that you can receive that will be affected by criminal status, criminal charges. So, especially now with the passage of the Lake and Riley Act, that is very detrimental to immigration cases, wherein not just convictions but also criminal charges. So, even if a charge is being brought against you, that can be used against you in certain instances. So, originally what it was is if you were applying for certain immigration benefits, if you had one felony or two misdemeanors, that could be reasons for USCIS to deny your claims, to deny your applications for relief or for any immigration benefits. So even if your criminal attorney is like, hey, this is great, we were able to get this down from a felony to a misdemeanor, but you also already had a misdemeanor before, now you have two misdemeanors, and that can be a bar. So that can keep you from being able to receive some immigration relief. So because if you
And
have
naturalization, and
and
naturalization too.
naturalization as well.
Hmm.
Like you said,
Yeah.
if you have one felony or two misdemeanors, that can be very detrimental to your case. So it's very, I would say, crucial that you have a criminalization attorney, someone that knows both areas and how it's going to affect, to be able to see if there's any way that we can get the charges dropped, so that you're not charged with it. That it doesn't show up on your record, because once the criminal background check is done, again, based off the Lake and Riley Act, if the charge is there, not just the
Mhm.
conviction, if the charge is there, that can be detrimental to your case. It can affect you being able to get certain benefits, and it can have long term effects, even up until naturalization.
Yeah, we have a client that I was just thinking about, where he was actually kind of the victim of a crime with
Mhm.
fraud with, with his bank account, and he reported it. And then, can you talk a little bit about what happened in that case, exactly because of the Lake and Riley Act? I mean, of course, we never name names or the places of the client, but just in general, what happened with that client, just for something that he was totally innocent in, you know?
Exactly. In that situation, trying to do the right thing and bringing the fraudulent activities to light to his bank and letting them know, like, hey, here's what's happening in my account. Then it happened that the charges were now brought against him. So, and based on the Lake and O'Reilly Act, so any theft charges. So in his case, they said forgery and a robbery using false instruments, meaning like using writing false checks or fraudulent checks. So that is a robbery crime, and under the Lake and Riley Act, whether it be a charge or a conviction, that'd be reason for ICE, for certain agencies to detain individuals, and they would, and so even though he stepped up and was trying to do the right thing, he ended up being the victim here in this case two times over. So
Yeah.
not only
Yeah,
was he
because
a victim of fraud.
he just noticed some activity in his account, some money being deposited that was not, from his. At first, he thought it was his paycheck, and he's like, "Wait a minute, I'm getting extra money here." And he went to the bank and said, filed a complaint, and said, he thinks somebody's trying to do some fraud. There's some money that he doesn't recognize. And then I guess the bank called the authorities, and then all of a sudden, I showed up at his house. So it's very scary now, I think, for immigrants in that sense, because you're trying to do the right thing, and then it goes. It's like they've taken the Lake and Riley Act to the extreme, where like even just a suspicion of something without even really allowing the case to maybe go to court and see, it's like boom, you can get grabbed and taken by ICE. I mean, it's always been a little bit stricter, I think, for immigrants, always.
Mhm.
But if you have any type of criminal issue now, just like a suspicion or any type of arrest, that's it. Like there's no second chances, and it's bad because there are innocent people that are kind of getting swept up with this. So, and as I said, that can affect your naturalization. If you have a green card now, when you apply for your naturalization, any little thing that you've had in the past, that can come up in your naturalization interview, and they could deny your naturalization. And not only that, what they're saying is that they could actually place you in removal proceedings. So, so people, if you know that you have a clean record, never committed a crime, I would say 100% go for your naturalization. But
Yes.
if you know there's a little something in your past, like you were arrested, you did something, maybe now's not the time.
Right.
Maybe now's not the time to do the naturalization. But if you know you have a good record, it is a great benefit because another big benefit from a naturalization is the ability to bring more family members if you want to the United States. So we always talk about chain migration, which is how our current first lady brought her parents to the United States. And basically, chain migration. What is it, Carl? What is chain migration? It's not such a big deal like people talk about it. You just bring your family. So
Right.
what are the types of family members? Because you can, that's a big deal. Like your world opens up in the amount of or who, I would say, the categories of family members that you
Mhm.
can bring as an LPR versus the category of family members you can bring as a US citizen. So what's like the difference, like just to show people the benefits of doing a naturalization, what's the difference in terms of bringing family members if you're a US citizen versus if you're an LPR?
Yeah, so definitely as a U.S. citizen, one of the most common ones is for a spouse. Spouses, you can bring your spouse in, as well as for a parent, they can petition and bring in their child that's under 21, and then also, it's the categories that they refer to as the immediate relative. Um,
Exactly.
you know,
Yep.
and
Immediate relative. Hmm. So
yeah,
that just grows when you're a U.S. citizen, because as a U.S. citizen, you can also bring your parents, and then you can bring your siblings. Whereas as a legal permanent resident, it's more like your nuclear family, just like your wife and kids, your wife and kids. So a lot of people tell me, I've had this so many times happen to me. I want to bring my nieces, I want to bring my nephews because now they're big and they want to go to college. And I said, well, you've been a U.S. citizen for 20 years. Why didn't you apply for your brother or sister? He wasn't interested in coming. He rather stayed in his country. Now the kids want to come to the United States. They want to come to college here. You can't do it.
yeah,
There's no category for bringing nieces and nephews.
right,
But if you, as a US citizen, immediately, as soon as you get your citizenship, you apply for your brother. I'm not saying it's going to happen immediately. It's a long wait. I think it's like 10 years or 12 years. But maybe by the time those little ones, your nieces and nephews, are big enough that they want to go to college, then his case might get approved. And if the kids are under 21, then when he comes, they can come. So
right,
you see the advantage of having that application if you're a naturalized U.S. citizen, whereas you can't do that if you are just like a legal permanent resident. And the parents is a big deal because parents get approved like immediately because parents are like, right, their mom, dad, they're considered immediate relative, so
hmm
they get approved immediately. So sometimes I'll tell people, well, apply for your parents and have the parents apply for the brother and sister because
right,
then it might be faster through them. But I want to talk a little bit about the naturalization interview, the civic questions. I just want to mention what's the big deal about the questions. The biggest deal is the questions are going to be more that you have to study. So you used to have to study 100 questions. Now they're adding 26 questions. So it's going to be 126 questions that you have to study. And the other big deal is the amount of questions that you had to do. You only have to pass 6 questions. So actually, on the day of the interview, they didn't ask you 100 questions. They would ask you 10 questions, and out of those 10, you had to get 6 correct. But now the change is that they're going to ask you 20 questions, and out of those 20, you need to get 12 correct.
right,
But you need to study 126 questions.
hmm yep,
So you don't know what question they're going to throw at you. So you could be like, oh, I'm studying this, I'm studying, and then they ask you another question. So it is kind of an exam. I don't think it's that hard, but it's basically like the basics of American history. I'm like, who was the father of the United States? George Washington. You
right,
know, what was one of the reasons for the Civil War? Slavery. Um, name like 3 wars that took place in the 20th century. So then you have to think about that. Like, okay, there's so many wars that took place in the 20th century: World War One, World War Two, Vietnam War. There's so many wars that took place.
right,
So it's things like that. One thing that people get tripped on about a lot is they may ask you, "Who's your senator?" or "Who's your congressman?" So you should know that. You should, because some people don't know who their senator or who their congressman is.
right,
So, but now they're adding these extra questions, and these extra questions maybe have a little bit more to do with like your good moral character, but they're just a little bit more in depth. So the exam has gotten a little harder. So I do want to mention their exceptions because I have some clients who've been here for years and they're just like, I don't know what to do. Should I apply? And as Carl was saying, it's such a big deal because from a criminal perspective, if you, let's say you commit a crime, they can't just deport you. We're like, but if you do and you're a legal permanent resident, you're out.
Right.
So that's a big deal about that. But we just want to talk about some recent news that happened this week. So we talked about the naturalization, and this is affecting all communities, all communities. So I heard a case about an Indian woman, a grandmother, who was detained by ICE. Did you hear about that case,
Wow.
Carl?
No. No. Can you tell me
Yeah.
about
So she was she's Punjabi Indian and she's been in the United States for 33 years and she was detained by ICE and she was deported. So one of the things that I want to say about elderly people, because we're talking about naturalization, which is the big deal that's happening. There is an exception for elderly people because a lot of people that are elderly are kind of like, I'm too old to study for the test. I'm not going to be able to pass. But there, for now, this is the law for now. Might change. There is an exception. So if you are over 55 years old and you've been in the United States for 15 years, and
Yes.
if you're over 60 years old and you've been in the United States for 20 years, but you have to have had legal permanent resident status for that time. So if you've been a legal permanent resident for 15 years and you're over 55, you can get an exception to have the exam, the naturalization exam, in your language. And
Right.
then also they, so that's the exception because normally the naturalization exam is always in English. If you're over 60 years old and you've had your legal permanent resident status, your green card, for 20 years, you can get an exception to have the naturalization exam in your language, but you have to show that you've held legal permanent resident status for this time, 15 to 20 years, and you're over 55, 60 years old. So I
Mhm.
always tell people that if you're young, you're not going to get that exception. So you better make sure you learn English and you brush up on your English and everything.
Yeah.
But, that was a sad case that I heard about the 73-year-old grandma, because people they're not really taking this kind of stuff into consideration. But I just want to say to those elderly people out there who think, well, I'm too old to study for the test and I'm not going to be able to do it in English, think about that exception because you may qualify for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you can get that English language requirement waived, and just only have to take the civics part. And here at Claxton, we'll prepare you for the civics exam. We'll go through some questions with you, make sure you know. And like you said, it's a very key part that I see that they're also mentioning is the local politics because
Yes, because
everyone
you had to
focuses.
prepare someone for naturalization, remember,
Yes.
recently, and that person passed. He passed his exam. He's now a U.S. citizen. So
Mhm.
tell us about that. You said local politics. They're asking more about that now.
Yeah, because when everyone thinks, okay, I'm going to study for a civics exam, we're thinking of politics. We think, the president, vice president, and that's an
Mm-hmm.
easy one to get by because you turn on the news, you'll hear about the
Yeah.
president, you'll hear about the vice president. But like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we'll get asked about your local governor, who's your state senator,
Yes.
who's the
Mm-hmm.
mayor of your city, things like that, and what are the different levels. So just to know that there are local levels, state, federal, and the differences between. So that's just information that you also do want to know. And then it also helps because that can help to build up the engagement and your participation within your community as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. And the civic exam, that part, they always ask about, like, there's a question about the legislative branch, like how many congressmen are there? How many senators are there? So that's the kind of stuff that you may not think is on the
Mhm.
exam because it's not really history, it's more like
Yeah,
civics, but they ask that kind of stuff. Well, how many congressmen, how many senators, how many years does a senator get to be
right.
a senator? 6 years. How many years in a congressman? 2 years. So things like that, that not to me, like, it might be common
Mhm.
knowledge, but I think that most people that went to school here, the exam's not that hard for you. Like if you did high school here, if you came here as a kid, the exam's not going to be that hard because it's mostly like U.S. history, common things. But if you're coming from another
Mhm.
country, then yeah, it could be hard. Because I had one case where my client, I think he was from Argentina, and we had the naturalization interview, and the lady asked him, "Well, name a war that took place in the 20th century," and he said the Civil War, and I was like, the Civil War was like 18 something. That was in the previous century. So I'm looking at him like,
Yeah.
no. But it's, to me, it's like, okay, well, everybody knows this. But really, if you didn't go to school here, no, everybody
Right.
doesn't know this. This is stuff that people have to study. So it is getting a little bit more difficult, but I still believe that it's worth it to have that naturalization. One, to protect you from any criminal things, because some people say, "Well, I've never committed a crime. I would never commit a crime." But something happens one day. It could be an
Right.
accident. It could be a car accident, and you accidentally hit someone, and God forbid it turns into a criminal case. Having that naturalization, it's not that easy to just
Right.
deport
Exactly.
you. So I think that is one of the biggest things this week that's coming out. And I do want to reiterate about the
Yes.
TPS
Yes.
because we're still getting questions from the Haitian community. Is TPS over? Is TPS over? No, TPS is not over. It's good until February of
Yes.
next year. Also, in the case with TPS, National TPS and Alliance versus Chrissy Nome, Judge Chen, I believe that case protects the Haitian community as well. I know it was mainly for the Venezuelan community because their TPS had ended. But I believe it protects the Haitian community because there was mention of the Haitian community as well. But I'm going to confirm that. But I know there was a previous case that came out that said that they couldn't cut short the TPS. So the difference was with the Venezuelan community, they had reached their 18-month limit, but the Haitian community, we haven't reached our
Right.
18-month limit. So the Haitian community is until like February of 2026. What was happening with the Haitian community is they were trying to cut off
Mm.
that time. So that's a little bit different. And that's one of the reasons why the judge said they couldn't do that. So what do you think what do you think will happen with our the Haitian community? Because a lot of them are nervous, like what should I do in those situations, if I don't have anything else, if I just have my TPS, like, is there anything else that they should apply for, or try to see if they can get another form of status? Because we don't know what's going to happen in February.
Right. I'm optimistic, but also realistic at the same time. So, we're hoping that there's something that can be done and we can get a redesignation, get an extension, but it's looking like it may just be ending in February. But all hope is not lost because there are other pathways that can be done. So there are like work visas that can be done.
Exactly.
A work visa can also help you. So if you have the degree in a certain field that you're working in, say like healthcare, so some of our nurses, nursing is big within our Haitian
Yes.
community. So
Yep.
if you have the education showing that you have the equivalency of a U.S. education for nursing, or the years of experience to match, there's a possibility that a work visa can be available for you. A labor certificate.
Yeah, especially if you entered legally. So if you entered with a visa, and let's say you applied for TPS, or if you entered with humanitarian parole and then you applied for TPS and you never really fell out of status, and you're a nurse, you could get a hospital that could be willing to do a labor certification for you, and you could end up getting a legal status through that hospital. So nursing is a very big deal, just because there's about two careers that are always in high need in the United States. And one is nursing, and the other one is physical therapy. So a lot of people are always trying to here from other countries using those two fields, and a lot of times they get approved because for labor certifications, that could even be considered a national
Right.
interest waiver, which is it's basically the same thing, a labor certification, but you jump the process of maybe needing a petitioner to file for you, because you're saying that what you are bringing to the country is in the national interest. So a lot of people try to apply for national interest waivers, and then they don't get approved, because maybe the job that they do is not something that is so
It's
like needed in
right.
the United States, or there's a lot of other people in the United States that can do that
Hmm.
type of work. But when you're talking about something like nursing, physical therapy, or some type of maybe very specific engineering, or very specific type of like highly skilled level type of job, you can say, like, I think I had a client once that he was a mechanic on like Black Hawk helicopters and stuff like that, and he was from Colombia, and because but he had gotten trained by the U.S. Army in Colombia, and he was in the Army in Colombia, and he was able to get a labor certification because there's not a lot of companies, not a lot of people in the United States that know how to be a mechanic for like helicopters. So it doesn't have to be a super high level like PhD, but it has to be something that maybe if there's not a lot of people that can do that
Right.
type of job. So, but I think that labor certifications are very good. Another like form of relief for our clients that are worried about TPS. So that's very much something that's
Yeah.
concerning me.
Mhm.
However, unfortunately, we have heard more of just visas getting revoked because people are asking me, well, I want to get a visa. And like, how are you seeing the climate in applying for visas and applying for anything coming to the United States now, Carl? Is it easier or is it getting
Um,
harder?
I don't think for a while anything's going to be easier. It is getting a little bit harder. They're making it a little tougher. So in applying
Yeah.
before, it was okay if you got an
Mhm.
RFE because at least if you got the request for evidence, you were able to respond to it. They gave you the time frame when you could respond, and they let you know exactly what it is that you needed to provide in order for them to carry on with your case. We're seeing now with this administration that the directive is to not even issue the RFE, but just to outright deny. So just making it
Mhm.
a little bit tougher for you know our
Yes, that's
community.
100% true. 100% true. And that is one of the reasons why it's good to do your case with an attorney. And we're not saying this because we're attorneys. I mean, it looks like it, but really, just because doing your application sometimes with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, or somebody who says, "Well, I speak English, I can fill out
Right.
the form for you." But these requests for evidence, they are
Hmm.
serious. Like they're talking about not even issuing requests for evidence, and just like if the package is missing
Hmm.
something, just boom, just deny the case. And that's one of the reasons why it's even more important to make sure like your package
Right.
is well done, like everything is well prepared, your you submitted all your evidence, because you may not get a request for evidence to fix whatever wasn't
Hmm.
submitted correctly. And it's so funny because I had a client tell me like he paid the fee, because the fee is
Yes.
huge, right? The adjustment of status fee is like 1,400 right now, $1,440. And the client said, well, I paid the fee, so they have to approve me, don't they? Like, no. They don't have to
Hmm.
approve you. And I try to explain it like it's like you go to a club, like you at the door there's somebody taking your money. So at USCIS there's somebody at the door
Hmm.
taking your money. If you file that application and you don't have that filing fee, boom, they can just take it out, throw it away, reject it, and they can keep the money.
They
They
will.
will keep the money. But the person who's necessarily letting you in the door, it doesn't mean that you can't get a bouncer later on who kicks you out if you start
Hmm.
acting up. So let's say you go inside to the club and then like something's going on. They look through this application. They say, "Oh no, this is not well done. She didn't submit this. She didn't submit that. She didn't submit
Hmm.
the medical report," because now they want the
Yes.
medical
Yeah.
report up front, whereas before it used to be
Hmm.
afterwards. They'll just be like, "Boom, you're out," and they
And they
will
will
keep
keep
your
it.
money.
Yes.
USCIS does not care. They will
They
keep your
will.
money.
Indeed. So it's like you said,
So.
in that club analogy, there's a bouncer that's always circling around in the
Mhm.
club. So, USCIS, they're
Mhm.
looking, they're
Mhm.
going through everything with a fine tooth comb now. And if one thing is missing, like there are people getting
Mhm.
their applications denied because they
Mhm.
signed on the wrong line, you know?
Yes.
Those little
They don't understand. They're like, but I paid all this money. Like, what do you mean I'm not gonna get approved? I'm like, no, they
yeah,
don't
the
care.
payment is guaranteed.
That was just the
Right,
filing fee.
exactly. Just for them to even take it.
and and all the filing fees went up. So that's another thing. Like pretty much, I think in everything, the filing fees went up. The filing fees went up in the court, which usually USCIS, the filing fees always go up every, couple years. But the court fees have really stayed like stable. And now the filing fee for the courts has like gone up like astronomically.
Yes.
I think now to do a motion to reopen, it's like $1,000. If you're detained, it's $5,000 for a motion to
Yeah.
reopen. So they're making it very difficult for people to reopen their case. So I don't know, like if you heard about the case. There was a case recently where someone, oh, they went to court. I don't remember the name of the case, but basically the person had prepared their application, I think, with like a paralegal or somebody, and the person put in like a really basic application. They didn't show any evidence, and this case went up because basically what the judge did is he reviewed the package and he said, this application doesn't look legally sufficient to even file an application for asylum. And he just dismissed the case immediately, and the person basically got it in deportation. So the person appealed, and the case kept going through the appeal process. And basically, the Court of Appeals upheld it and says he had the right to do that. But I remember a couple of months ago, like I think back in May or June, there was a memo that went out to the judges saying to do exactly this thing. So if you see like the application is really basic, it's legally deficient, they said that was the wording they used. If the application is legally deficient, they can just go ahead and boom, like dismiss the case, close your case, and then if you don't have any other status, then you can get a deportation because technically your only status is the fact that you're waiting for your case to process through the court. So it's a way for them to, I guess, finish the hearings or get lower the amount of cases that they have, because I think in the courts right now there's over 4 million cases going through the immigration courts, and there are not enough judges.
That's a lot.
So there's not enough judges. So that is something that's been happening recently. So I think for now that's about all I can think about. The biggest thing to me was the naturalization. Oh, and I do want to talk about the expedited removal. Did you see that case, Carl, with the judge in Washington D.C. that blocked expedited removals?
No,
So yeah, right.
that
Isn't
is
that cool? So it's a female judge. I believe she was appointed by like Biden, I think, or something. And basically, she said that the administration had to stop doing these expedited removals because they're, how they had expanded it from 14 days. So usually ICE had the right to do an expedited removal for someone who had been in the country for less than 14 days, and if they caught the person within 100 miles of
Mhm.
the border. But what was happening is people were going to court. They changed it immediately. I think the first day on January 20th, that was one of the first executive orders saying that now these expedited removals can be in the whole
Right.
United States and up to two
Mhm.
years. So that judge, for now, that case still applies. She said that they can't continue to do that because now you're talking about the, due process. So basically, they're going over due process. And with one of the comments she said is like sweeping up people like that, there's a higher likelihood that you can take someone that legally does have the right to be here or legally has their case. People that have already have kind of an established um, um, they haven't established a family here, work, life here. So there's an interest. They have
Yeah,
a
yes,
vested
yes.
interest in being in the United States. It's not someone that had
Right.
just gotten here. They maybe already have a car, a house, an apartment, a lease that they're paying, and then for you to just grab them like that, because people were asking, well, how are they taking people? And it said because the prosecutor was saying, I want to dismiss all charges against this person. And then they said, oh, they have less than 2 years here. So the person walks out, and then ICE says,
Right.
expedited removal, you're
Mhm.
out of here. So this judge, very brave. I hope she has security guards protecting
Yes.
her. I pray for her
Every
every day. She said that you can't do
Mhm.
this anymore. So that is a good thing. I think I don't know how much that's affecting because I still see, people getting taken, but maybe people that already have orders of deportation, or people that are just undocumented. But I'm not seeing so much people in going to court and doing the right thing and then getting grabbed by that anymore. So I'm not sure how that's going to go because as you know, they're probably going to appeal.
Yeah. But it's good because it
But
gives us hope that, that, we still see that there are good people out there
yes,
that are still fighting the good fight for us, and that we still have some
yes.
allies on the
Mhm.
bench as well. So that's always good to know that we have allies on the bench. So
Isn't it so good? I mean, I see when I see judges, like that. I just see that they're so brave, and I have so much respect for them. First of all, I know I couldn't be a judge, like never. I could not be a judge because first of all, I'm just like too empathetic. I think I'd be like, okay, I can see it from your perspective. No, I can't do
Yeah.
it. I had a friend once who said, "Let's go apply to work as a prosecutor because we were gonna." ICE was looking for prosecutors, and I said, "No way!" First of all, I would get fired so fast because I'd probably be like, "Look, if they don't have a criminal issue, just
Disapprove.
approve the case. Like, come on, like these are good people here."
Yeah.
And I might get some backlash from this, but I'm gonna say it when people say, "Well, they need to come here the right way and everything like that," and my grandparents came here like this way or that way, I promise you, I promise you that when your great grandparents came, they did not have to jump through all these hoops
Yes.
because the immigration laws have gotten
Mhm.
stricter and stricter and
Yes.
harder over the years. So even when my grandmother came here in the 60s
Yeah.
from Haiti.
Right.
I doubt she had to go through all the stuff that people are
Mhm.
going through right now. I think she was here when Martin Luther King was shot. So I am 100% sure that if your grandparents came in the 40s and 50s or even before that, there is no way. There were people coming through Ellis Island. They had to do some little paperwork. Some people changed their
Mhm.
names, but it was not what it is right now today. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I think that if people are looking for a better life, but that's just my perspective. If they're not criminals and they actually come here to work and they are good people, I think we should give them a chance. But what people have to go through now, you and I know, Carl, is very
Yes.
hard.
Indeed, it is.
It's not easy to win an
Mhm.
asylum case. It's not easy to win a cancellation of removal. It's not easy to even get your green card. People go through so much. It's
Right.
very hard. And I think I have a lot of respect for immigrants today because probably your parents and my grandparents did not have to go through all
Right.
this.
Exactly.
And they came here, back in the day and stuff. So, but I appreciate you so much, Carl. Is there anything else you want to say to our community, to our, immigrant community as immigration attorneys? I just want you to know we're working hard for you. But is there anything you want to say before we close for today?
Yeah, this as stated before, information is power. The information is there. Seek out your nearest immigration attorney. They will provide you with the information. We're not hiding the information. We're not keeping it for ourselves. We are willing to share it with you. We will let you know what you have. And like I
Hmm.
said, there are still good people out there. There are still allies around that are helping. We're very thankful for them that are on the bench, that are helping us out, and they're helping you out. And we're going to keep
Yes.
fighting the good fight. We are here, even late hours. You see, we are here.
Yeah. Trying to give information to the community. And as it says, it changes almost daily, but we can't do a video every day. But
Right.
at least weekly we'll try to give like updates to our community, our clients also who sometimes just call me and say, "Well, what happened
Right.
with this case?" So look, I'm giving the video,
Yes.
watch the video. But we are trying to give the information because we do care and we do want to help people. And everybody, whether you're our clients or not, we wish you the best, and we hope that at the end you're able to get your legal status in this country and have a little bit of peace because everybody deserves that.
Yes. All right. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
All right, Carl. See you
Bye.
later. Good night. Good night.